up here and pray for offering? I don't think he knew. No? That's okay. Could we go ahead and get the ushers up, please? I'm going to go ahead and take our offering. Sorry, a little bit of technical difficulties. Jesus still loves us, right? All right. All right, so let's go ahead and, are you going to go ahead and, all right. Thank you, Mark. Come on. Yeah.
Father God, today we ask you to bless us as we make this offering to you. I can tell you, God, that personally my financial situation has been blessed by my giving. And so we ask you to bless everyone's giving today. And we say these things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Amen.
announcements. We just thank everybody for being here today. If you're new, welcome. If you're old, welcome. Everybody, welcome. Anyway, Christine, do you want to come up and do the announcement?
Good morning, family. I get the opportunity to give the announcements. So, this Wednesday at 9 o'clock here, they do prayer each Wednesday. So, if you're feeling a call into that or leading to pray, come join them. They'll be here. Wednesday nights, we have, what is it called? Wednesday night family night.
Yes.
We have a class in here. We have classes for kids and classes for youth. So, that's at 7. So please come on out to that. You're teaching this week, right, Anthony? Yeah. Fridays we have Celebrate Recovery. At 6 is the dinner, and then 7 are the classes. This Tuesday we have girls' night, and I get to speak at that. Yay! And they have it as a recipe exchange. So bring one of your favorite recipes to share and to eat, and we're going to talk about healthy choices, lifestyle choices. So I'm not there to beat you up or spank you. We're just going to do this together in life so we can better use our body to serve the Lord. Is that it? Church cleaning March 9th, so come clean the church with us on the 9th.
Our men are coming home.
Oh yeah, the guys are at retreat. We have a group of guys that went to retreat this weekend, and we've heard just a tiny bit, Huntress, just a tiny bit. I guess they're having a good time because they don't even have time to text or send pictures or anything. So they'll be home today, so please pray for their safe travels because there's lots of snow up there.
Hey guys, how you doing? Hey guys, how you doing? All right. So I want to tell you guys about this childhood friend that I had. Like, who has like a friend that they grew up with them? All right. So this guy that I grew up with, like, I absolutely love. I only got to see him like once a month, but I personally felt that he was one of my best friends. Man, this cord is annoying. All right. So on a Sunday, this really yellow guy would show up, and I would get super excited. And he was like about that big, and he was always behind this curtain, but he would just pop up, like, "Hey guys, how you doing? Let me tell you about BJMC." And we're like, "Yay, Buddy Barrel!" Right? Well, I was probably about that tall. He was like that big. Well, he grew up with me. If everybody would turn around and give a hand to my best friend, Buddy Barrel! Hey, buddy.
Oh, because I got a new voice, can you tell?
Yep.
So I don't have to screw.
Buddy had a successful surgery thanks to your guys' donations.
Good. And you know what? I'm still asking for money. Oh, I want some more money. This is a little bit. And you know what? We have pledged $5,000 to make a building in Laos for the kids. Because those kids over there do a lot of funny things. They just are really, they need help. And so, you can present $500 to me. Oh, that'd be cool. And you can do the barrel here. And there's girls back there who don't have any. You know, they're pretty. Because we used to have a little brown barrel. And it was about like this tall. And so, it's kind of grown up a little bit. I'm getting shorter, but the barrel's getting taller. You know, if you're really tall, you know, when you're little, and then you see by barrel you're short, well, you know, that's okay because I'm mighty. Just ask, and I'm mighty. So,
Hey,
we're
buddy,
going to
can
have
you
some
come over here so the camera can see you?
Oh, they can't see me?
No, the camera can't see you. Come on over here.
Oh, I want the camera to see me.
All right.
Oh, goodness.
All right.
Oh, yeah. I don't want anybody not see me, because after all, I'm the later of the appointment, and those that have not been involved, it goes boys and girls missionary challenge. And so I'm challenging everybody to bring their money. If you don't today, bring it some other time. But we're going to help missionaries. That means buy cars and all kinds of things we do. And so I think there's some questions that I'm supposed to be answering to.
Okay. Well, first of all, who here had a great Valentine's Day? Woo! Right?
Yeah.
I
I had my Valentine's Day lasted like 2 weeks. Like my wife and I spent like a good 2 weeks just like exchanging presents just for the fun of it. Buddy Barrel, in light of Valentine's Day, I would just like to say, I love you.
Oh, thank you.
Alright, so now I've got this question. It's been on my mind.
Oh.
I was wondering, is there like a little vase or something that you're in love with? Who do you love, buddy?
Everybody.
Oh, is that why I used to see you hanging out with Wendy World all the time? Because you just love everybody in the world?
That's right, I did.
Okay.
I love everybody, little and big and everybody.
Oh, okay.
In the whole world. In the whole world.
Alright, well, next question. You love the whole wide world, everybody in it.
Right.
What can we as a church do to help spread that love?
Bring more money. big offering.
Yeah.
That's what we can do to help everybody, help missionaries, help everybody. Just bring lots of your money. Yeah, that's a big offering. Oh, cool.
And on top of money, I assume we can also pray.
Yes, you can pray, and we need prayer. Missionaries need prayer, and everybody needs prayer. You have raise your hand if you agree. If you need prayer. Oh.
It's a lot of hands raised.
Okay, see, we all need prayer. I need prayer. Everybody needs prayer.
Yep.
And love. You know, the right kind of love. And not the mushy kind, but the godly love, you know? Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, there's this verse, but I can't quite remember all of it. And I was wondering if you could help me with it.
Okay, we'll try.
It goes, abideth faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is what?
Charity or love.
Oh, the greatest of these is love?
Oh, yeah, charity.
Oh, it's all about love. All right.
About love, okay.
All right, well, buddy, if you could do me a favor, since we're talking about praying, could you go ahead and pray over our offering for the missionaries and just over the missionaries that are all over the world right now?
Sure. Lord, we come to you and we just thank you that you love us and that you love each missionary. And I pray that you just use this offering and make it big, because we need missionaries need you and we need you to help us to pray in your name. Amen.
Yeah. All right, so if I get everybody, go ahead and come up here and feed Buddy Jr.
Oh, yeah.
Buddy Jr. is really, really hungry. Looks like somebody already started.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so everybody go ahead and come up and feed Buddy.
All the kids come up. That's not the thing. All the kids come up. Oh, I think you're going to have to help me, Brother Anthony, find the barrel. There's the barrel.
Got you right over here. Just listen to the sound of the children.
All right.
All right.
Where is it?
Yep, right here.
Okay.
Yep, there you go.
Thank you.
Yep.
Whoops. Oh, there's one in it. What?
All right.
Well, see, we all need money. I just did this again. Yep.
All right. Ooh.
Whoa.
Thank you so much.
Woo.
Look at that.
Oh, kids need all their bells.
Look at that. And see, that's why, that right there is why Buddy went from like that big when I was a kid to this big, because you guys fed him so much.
You know, when you're tall, our pastor happens to be really tall. And I look really little compared to him, but he's really tall. And he's skinny, he's not round.
Not anymore.
He's really skinny, and I'm just plump, and I want to bye!
Alright, bye. Bye, Buddy. Thank you for coming. I'll see you next month. Alright, if I could get somebody to come grab Buddy's Jr., take him to the back. Alright, now, who is doing Kids Church today? Miss Tina. Alright, Miss Tina, go ahead and come up here, please. So, just like to tell you guys from experience that doing Kids Church is no small thing. Just like my friend Buddy went from like this to this, like doing Kids Church is a huge thing. So if everybody could just stretch your hands out right now to my friend Tina. Father God, I just thank you so much for the blessings that you pour out on us, Lord, and for the callings that are on our lives, and just the ability that you give us to serve you, Lord, even though you don't necessarily need us. You choose us, and you give us what we need to be able to serve you in great ways, Lord. And I pray for that today, Lord, in Kids Church, Lord, for great things to happen through our children and through our teacher, Lord, in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right, all the kids, if you could go ahead and come up and follow Miss Tina. You guys are going to go to class right now. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. And now that half of our congregation congregation is going, I need everybody to get on your phones and call your friends to come to church. Alright, well, I did not bring my notes up here with me, so hold on just a moment. There we go. Okay. Now you're not gonna do what I want? Oh, you guys are all about to go see all my pictures. Alright. So, just to start off with, there's two really amazing people on that screen. I don't know if you can tell. A little while back, we went on a little trip to what was called the Spiral Jetty. What she said. And it's just a really cool picture. It's out in the Salt Flats in Utah. And I just saw this and I'm like, that's a perfect picture. So I took it. And the whole purpose of me putting it up there is because, Valentine's Day, truth is nobody really says it enough, but those are the most important people in the world to me. Figured it was a great time to say it. Valentine's Day just passed. I love you, baby. I wish Ivy could be here. But I just want to challenge you guys. Make sure you're telling the people in your lives how important they are to you. Because you never know, like, when somebody's having a bad moment and they just need to know that they're loved. All right, so with that said, and backwards, here we go. All right. Okay, so you can pretend that's not up there. So, what are our needs? What are things that we deserve and things that we need? Air, water, food, shelter. So on the screen you guys have what's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All right, the very base of it, it talks about some of the stuff we just said. You've got like the basic needs of air, food, water, shelter, warmth, sleep. Like without any of this, how many of us could survive? Okay, if you just took one of those things out, how many of us could survive? I guess it depends on what that one thing is. Because shelter. You could survive for a while without having a roof over your head. It wouldn't be fun, but air. Like, who really needs to breathe, right? No. Food. No, I couldn't go without food. Sorry. Alright, and then, so you got that, that's your basics. Everybody absolutely needs that. Without that, you cannot live. That is our basic needs. And then the next step up goes into like safety needs, which is just an extension of that. We have this need for protection. We have this need to feel safe, right? We have a need for limits. If limits aren't set for us, we have this tendency to get ourselves in trouble, right? Okay. We have a need for stability. We have a need for even laws. You go up even beyond that. I'm losing my place. We have the biological needs. We have a need for family. again, that goes back to what I started with, showing appreciation. Who needs to feel loved? Anybody? Oh, you got, all right, there we go. We all need love, right? We have a need for even like work groups. We have this need to be able to communicate. Some more than most, or some more than others. But we all have this need for some form of communication, some form of human contact, verbal contact, physical contact, emotional contact, right? And we have this need, it's called esteem needs. You have this need to meet achievements. I don't care who you are, everybody has this need to be successful. Whether it's that you need other people to see that you're successful, or you just need to be successful to be able to build yourself up. We all have this need to be successful. A lot of us have a need to hold a certain status. We have this need for a certain level of respect. The way people treat us, we have a need to be respected and not demeaned. We have a need for our reputation. What do people think of us? We don't want people thinking that we're horrible people or that we're dumb people. We have this need to be thought good of. And then all of that branches out to this need for personal growth. This is all stuff we need. Would anybody deny that we need all of this stuff? Nobody? Okay, so we need this stuff. How much of this stuff do we deserve? We deserve all of it. Okay. Well, so let's go back to the basic needs. It says we have a basic need for air. Then the Lord, back in Genesis chapter 2, then the Lord formed the man from the dust of the ground. He breathed the breath of life into the man's nostrils, and the man became a living person. So what did we deserve, or what did we do to deserve air? It was something that was simply given to us, right? We did nothing to deserve it. We did nothing to earn the ability or the right to breathe. There we go. I don't need that anymore anyways. So, and then we go in, God, He created us, He did this amazing thing where He spoke the universe into existence. He opened His mouth and like stars appeared, right? And then of all of that, He got down on His hands and His knees and He grabbed a chunk of dirt and He put effort into making us. And then, not only did He put effort into it, He put a piece of Himself. He said He breathed life into us. He literally gave us Himself. We did nothing to earn our existence. And then, sometime later, there's this tree, and the two people that God made are looking at this tree, and there's this serpent, and he comes up, and he's like, hey, doesn't that look good? And to make the long story short, we eventually get this attitude that we deserve to be like God. And we take a bite. And we take this bite. We're saying to God, we don't need you. We deserve better. In essence, we sinned. In Romans 23, it says, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. All good things come from God. God created life. We did nothing to deserve it. So everything we have, we do not deserve. The wages of sin is what? Sorry, the wages of sin is what? So then, we have needs, but what do we deserve? We deserve death. Ouch. This is a really dark sermon. Why am I preaching it? So for the wages of sin is death. So then, let me ask you this. What did Jesus deserve? Who was Jesus and what did He deserve? Anybody, what did Jesus deserve? Sorry, what was that? Everything. All right, so when you look at who Jesus was, go back into scriptures. Who knows John 3:16? Can you say it for me? That was beautiful. So, for God so loved the world that he gave his what? So what does that make Jesus? That makes him the heir of heaven and of earth. He deserved everything. You guys had it. He deserved absolutely everything just because of who he was. In Matthew 1:1, it names Jesus. It's going through the lineage of Jesus. And it names Jesus at the very beginning of it. It says Jesus was the son of David. Does anybody know who David was? David was the appointed king of the Jews. It was said that he had a heart after God's own. And it's saying that Jesus was the son of David. Not saying that he was the direct son of David, more saying that he was in the lineage of David. Meaning he had a claim to the throne. That not only as a son of God does he have a claim to everything, but on earth, by our own standards, he has a claim to rule over all of us. And then you go further into the Gospels and read through the Gospels, and you see multiple times that he's called a teacher, even a good teacher, making him worthy of us listening to him, making us worthy of us submitting to him. So what did Jesus do with all of this? With all this authority and all this stuff that he didn't necessarily need, but that he deserved? He laid it down. He gave it up. So you can turn with me to Luke 19, 1 through 10. Say aye, aye, Captain, when you get there. All right. I can't hear you. Alright, my daughter likes to do that to me. She's like, hi, Captain. We're like, what? Daddy? Oh, sorry. Alright, so Luke chapter 19, starting in verse 1. Then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Now behold, there is a man named Zacchaeus, who was the chief tax collector. So what do you guys know about tax collectors? We just had our tax season. There's probably still some people out there who need to file. Anybody out there who still needs to file? Not me. My wife is amazing. All right. So, tax collector, guy who basically comes and he takes your money, your hard-earned money, and he gives it to a government, right? Hopefully, you like the government that your taxes are going to. If not, I'll pray for you. All right. So, back then, the tax collectors were basically servants of the Romans. Who knew who the Romans were? All right, so the Romans, they were known as like the road builders. They had conquered the known world at that time, and part of what they conquered was Israel. So they were this foreign nation that had come into the nation of Israel and was basically telling them how to live their lives. Now, who here likes it when somebody stands over you and tells you what to do? One of my wife's favorite saying is, don't tell me how to live my life. And I respond by, live your life. All right, so they were the people who nobody really liked. And the truth of the matter is, of all the captors that Israel had from the beginning when they were in Egypt all the way up until Rome, Rome was probably the nicest to them. Probably still gave them the most authority. They were still able to go and worship God the way that they wanted to. They didn't have the Romans telling them, oh no, you're only going to worship our gods now. They didn't necessarily treat them like slaves, although there were rules like if a Roman soldier had walked up to you and said, hey, you're going to carry my backpack or all my supplies, you had to, by law, carry it for at least 1 mile. Like there were some annoyances. And the tax collectors would go, and they were Jewish people, they would go to their own people, they would take the money from their own people and turn around and give it to the Romans who were their captors. It was almost like a betrayal. And it says Zacchaeus was the chief of all of the tax collectors. That guy that all the tax collectors reported to, and he would give them their assignments, and then he would turn and report to the Romans and let them know, like, okay, this is how much we got from here, this is how much we got from here, here is what you guys have deserved, this one is for Pilate, this is for Caesar, all right, there you go. So, of all the tax collectors, he was the most despised. It says he was rich. It is safe to assume, it doesn't necessarily say it in the Bible, but it's safe to assume that the reason this man was rich is because while he was collecting money for the Romans, he was also collecting money simply for himself. Which is another reason that the Israelites would have hated him. Not only was he stealing, and everybody knew that he was stealing, but they couldn't touch him. Because if they even raised a finger against him, they would have the Roman army to deal with. Not a place to be wanted. So, and he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. So he was probably a little bit shorter than Buddy Barrel. So he hears that Jesus, this man that everybody is talking about, he's like Facebook famous, right? Everybody has heard of him. Everybody wants to meet him. He hears that he's coming to town. It'd be like if Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson came into town, like who would not want to go see Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, right? Nobody raised their hands. Oh, okay, there we go. A couple people, thank you. All right, it'd be like some famous person was coming to town and they're just going to walk through town, or even the president of the United States. Even if you don't necessarily like him very much, he's still the president of the United States, and who wouldn't take the opportunity to be able to say, I saw the president go through Overland, right? Wouldn't that be cool? Right. So he hears that Jesus is coming. He's like, I want to meet this guy. They say this guy heals people. They say this guy casts out demons. They say this guy does amazing things, and that when he speaks with an authority that is unearthly. I want to meet this guy. I want to at least be able to look at him. And he sought Jesus, but because of the crowd and because of his short status, he could not. So he ran ahead of the crowd and climbed up a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him. So how cool would that be? You're in this crowd and you're trying to jump up and you can't see him, so you climb up this tree where nobody's supposed to look. I mean, who's going to look up and be like, oh, hey, there's a little guy up there, right? So he's up there, and all of a sudden Jesus is walking, and he's got like this whole crowd going on around him, like no reason for him to avert his eyes upwards. And all of a sudden Jesus just stops and goes, what's up, man? Right? He probably melts it. He's probably like, oh, right? No, you don't think so? All right. Well, don't kill my dreams. So Zacchaeus made haste. Oh wait, I'm skipping places. Sorry. So he looked up and saw him, and he said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down. And received him joyfully. But when he saw it, so basically, I'm skipping over parts. Sorry. So basically, Jesus looks up, he sees this man, he's like, Zacchaeus, get over here, hurry up, I want to go have dinner with you, man. We're going to go hang out, and we're going to go play Uno or something. We're going to connect. So Zacchaeus is like, oh, sweet, Jesus wants to come to my house, what? I just became the cool guy. Right. So Zacchaeus is making his way down, and amongst everybody, like, does Jesus even know who he's talking to? This guy's a tax collector. Why? Why would Jesus want, you know what? I remember there was that one time at that one mountain that Jesus was preaching, and he's talking about like love and loving everybody, and how even tax collectors will be nice to their own friends. So what does it benefit? So obviously Jesus knows what tax collectors are all about. Why? So Jesus goes and he has dinner with this guy, and it doesn't give us any details about what they ate. It doesn't give us any details about if they really played Uno or who won the Uno game. It doesn't give us details about what they talked about. But what it says is afterwards, Zacchaeus went out. Everyone that he had stolen from, he gave sevenfold back to them. So So what did Jesus do with all this power and all this authority that he deserved? He loved the unwanted. He loved the undeserving. Let's go to John 8. John chapter 8, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We're going to start again with verse 1. Everybody can go ahead and say, "What's up?" as soon as you get there. Sorry, what was that? I can't hear you. What? Oh, come on, you heckle louder than that. All right, so, is everybody there? Sorry, what was that? Is everybody there? What's up? All right, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Now early in the morning, he came again to the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and he taught them. Then the scribes and Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her down in the midst of him, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act." So it wasn't just they heard rumors that this woman was being adulterous. Right? They didn't hear from their neighbor like, "Oh man, you gotta watch out for that girl, she's trouble." No, they had walked into this fella's house and found her with him in the act of getting to know her, as the Bible would put it. So they bring her after she's caught in the act of doing this, which makes me wonder, how did they know to go into that guy's house? And how come it doesn't say that the Pharisees brought this woman and this man caught in the act of doing it? Like, I've heard commentators, it doesn't say in the Bible, but I've heard commentators speculate that all of this was part of a plan to get Jesus, that it was one of those Pharisees who was actually doing it and let his buddies know, like, this is what's going to happen, so let's use this to get Jesus. Now, again, the Bible doesn't say that. You can read the word and interpret it for yourself, or as the Bible says, let the word interpret the word itself. But the Bible does clearly say that as they were doing this, that they were doing it as a way to try to catch Jesus, to get him to say or do something contrary to the law, so that then they would have a ground to arrest him. It was all a scheme. And how many times when we're going through the Bible, when the man is lowered from the ceiling of this house, and people start saying in their hearts, "Well, what is this guy doing here?" Or when this adulterous woman comes in and lays at the feet of Jesus and begins to wash his feet, and in the heart of Simon is saying, "Does Jesus not know who this is?" Like, Jesus hears our hearts. He knows our intentions. So Jesus knew immediately what was going on. This wasn't just a, "Hey, we got to do this because it's the right thing." This was a, "We got to do this because we don't like Jesus." So what does Jesus do? He does something that my wife hates that I do, but I don't think I do it quite on the level of Jesus. He shuts his mouth and he just kind of goes into his own, like, man zone up here, and it's just kind of like, it's a bunny. It's a puppy. Right? And actually, I don't know what he was drawing. The Bible never says what he was drawing. Again, I've read commentators that say that he very well have been writing out the names of everybody in that crowd and their sins. It's possible that he was just kind of praying to God, and you know how you kind of just like mindlessly, like when you're off in your own world, just start mindlessly doing stuff, like just mindlessly drawing in the sand, as he's like, "All right, God, so these guys have brought this woman. Your word really does say that if people are caught in this, that we're supposed to stone them, but I really don't want to be the person throwing a stone at somebody. God, please tell me what I need to do. I need to hear your voice right now, Father." And he's just sitting there being silent. Nobody sees him doing anything but drawing. You know, any idea how frustrating it is when somebody is doing something that you don't want them to do? The Pharisees put this plan together. They were scheming. They're like, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to get this girl. We're going to bring her up to Jesus. And this is how Jesus is going to respond. He's either going to respond this way, and he's going to prove that he's a good guy and that we should all listen to him, or he's going to do something else, and we're going to have him arrested. So those are the only two options Jesus gets. And then Jesus does none of those. I play this game on my phone that sometimes my wife hates it when I play it. Because I'm playing, it's a dinosaur game, and what you do is you catch these dinosaurs, and you build them up, and then you, go into battle with them. And I'll be fighting with my dinosaurs, and I have this plan. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna use this attack, and I'm gonna switch into this attack, and I'm gonna win. I'm gonna epically win. So I'm going through my plan, and then all of a sudden, the other teammate, I swear he was reading my mind or something, does exactly the thing that he needs to do to throw off my plan. And I just it makes me so mad. And my wife was like, Anthony, if you don't calm down, I'm gonna make you delete the game. They didn't do what I wanted them to do. It's not fun when people don't do what you want them to do. When you have this plan, you put all this work into this plan. My daughter, when she was younger, my wife would give her list. Okay, today we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And my dad would be like, all right, woo, we're going to have fun. So then they would do this, and this would take a little bit longer, so they would skip this and go to this. And they'd be like, excuse me, you said, I can't tell you how many times she said, you said, and things did not go according to plan, and it's irritating. So Jesus irritates these poor little teachers of the law, right? And so they're watching him draw, and I imagine some of them, the ones a little bit more set in their ways, are starting to turn a little red. They're like, excuse me, sir, we asked you a question. The law says that we're supposed to stone her. What do you say? Jesus still just kind of doodling. I made waves. Dude. There's a boat. That's the big fish that ate Jonah. Right. So he's just sitting there doodling, and then he kind of looks up and he's like, well, the one person in this crowd who has never sinned, right, who hasn't committed adultery, or who hasn't lied, or who hasn't stolen, who hasn't done anything ever worthy of being stoned, because the Bible says you get caught in these things, you're supposed to get stoned. The one person who's never been worthy of this action, of being in this place, you throw the first stone. So then everybody's just like, well, that's just messed up. And so some of the older people begin to walk away, and then some people are standing there. I imagine they've got this rock that just kind of tossed them. I think he knows. He just walks away, and then there's a couple more people, and they're slowly watching all their friends walk away, and then they realize oh man, we don't have this big crowd backing us anymore. I don't want to be here. They all walk away, and then Jesus, he's still just kind of doodling on the ground, minding his own business, and he looks up and he's like, there used to be a big crowd over here, what happened? And he sees this woman, and he's like, hey, where did your accusers go? And she kind of looks up, because I imagine, she's ashamed. She just her whole sin was just exposed to the whole world. Who likes to be exposed that way? You mess up, and all of a sudden everybody knows about it, and everybody's glaring down at you, who wants to be in that position? So I imagine she's laying on the ground, she's just kind of trying not to make eye contact with nobody. She might even have some tears in her face. She's not paying very close attention. And then she looks out, it says she looks around, she's saying, there's nobody. So then Jesus is like, well, you know what? Let me tell you, you're wrong. You're going to hell. No. Jesus is like, you know what? I don't accuse you either. The one person, we've established what Jesus deserves, the one person who actually had the right to judge her, said, you know what? I'm not going to judge you. Just stop doing it. How powerful is that? If we would, instead of mess up, or our family members when they mess up, or when they slip up, or they take that drink, or look at that picture, or whatever, and we get furious, and we start yelling at them, and we create this shame. How much more of a difference would it be if we did what Jesus did? I'm not going to judge you, but you're better than this. And we love them instead. Jesus loved the unlovable. He denied his own desires. If you could turn with me to Matthew 4, 2 through 11. When I was writing my notes, I kept going to Matthew 2 instead of Matthew 4. I'm like, this isn't the right story. I don't understand. So, I wrote it down wrong in my notes. I'll just have to say it from memory. All right, so, when you get there, say so. You guys are fast. All right, so Jesus hasn't quite started his ministry yet. He's just been baptized by his cousin John. And the Bible says that the Holy Spirit led him into the wilderness to be tempted, which shines some light on the disciples' prayer where it says, Lord, lead me not to temptation. I pray that God never leads me out to be tested like that. So he's out there, and it says for 40 days and 40 nights, he fasted, which meant not once did he touch food, not once did he drink a drop of water. Let's go back to our basic needs. What were our basic needs? We need air, we need food, we need water. Okay, so if we don't get those, particularly like food and water, what happens to us? We get super weak. Like right now, I'm constantly on my wife to make sure she's eating and drinking because, well, a lot of you remember what happened like a month or so ago. Right? Our body will get really weak, and we cannot do what needs to be done. We definitely can't do any work, let alone be able to stand in place for a few minutes. So Jesus is out there. He hasn't eaten for 40 days and 40 nights, and towards the end of this, the devil shows up. He's like, hey, Jesus, how you doing? So, if you're really the Son of God, right? He knows who Jesus is. He knows that Jesus is the Son of God, and that as a Son of God, he has authority that nobody else has. That he is heir to all of the universe and all of heaven and everything. And that he speaks with authority, and that if he says something's going to happen, it has to happen simply because he's Jesus. So the devil's like, all right, let's see if I can get him to abuse his authority. He says, Jesus, if you're really the Son of God, speak to those rocks and command them to become bread. Well, this would have been a real temptation because, as we said, Jesus did not eat or drink anything for 40 days. He was literally starving to death. How hard would it have been if I was in that place and I haven't had tacos for 40 days and 40 nights, and this guy comes up and he's like, you know what, if you just speak it, it's going to happen, man. All you have to do is tell that rock to turn into a taco, and you're good to go. I don't think I would have had the strength. I like tacos. All right. So what does Jesus do? He says, you know what? I do not live on food alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of my Father. He told his disciples when they were all at the well, and they went to go get him some food, and they come back, and they're like, hey, Jesus, here's your food. And he's like, man, I have food that you don't know of. Because he finds substance from his Father. So the devil's like, all right, no, that's cool, that's cool. So the devil's like, let's go for a walk. I want to show off this really cool building here. Like, come on, let's go to the roof of this building. And they're up on top of this building, and he's like, look down there, dude. There's a long ways down, Jesus. Like, I bet if you fell down, well, I mean, if that guy right there walking and kind of looks like an ant, if that guy fell down right there, he would at least break a couple of legs. So, Jesus, if you were the Son of God, jump. I mean, does the Bible not say, so the devil goes in, Jesus is talking about, like, I live on the Word of God. So the devil's like, all right, well, I'll give you some word of God. Bible says that God will command his angels to watch over you so you don't even stumble on a rock. So if you're the Son of God, well, go for it, man. So Jesus, he's not an idiot. He sees that the devil's just trying to play games, and he's like, well, the Bible also says, don't tempt the Lord your God. I mean, how often do we do silly things like pray that our football team wins? Huh? Leave the court alone? But it's food. But how often do we do things like, okay, I'm going to pray for my football team, and my football team's going to win, and I'm going to be like, I prayed, and it's because God is good that my football team won, right? Or we'll go to Vegas or to Reno and be like, I'm going to pray that I'm going to get the jackpot, man. Woo, ching, ching, ching. Or I'm going to get the lottery. I'm going to pray so hard that God has to let me win. Sorry, but we're tempting God when we do that. The Bible says don't do that. I mean, you do what you want with your money, but don't involve God in those kind of decisions. All right, so Jesus is like, don't tempt the Lord your God. And I was like, okay, fine. You win this one. You know your Bible very well. I'm proud of you, Jesus. But let me show you this. And they go on this another long walk, and they end up on top of this super high mountain that's so tall that they can see every kingdom of earth from it. He's like, hey, Jesus, let's see how well you know the answer to this one. I own all of this. Jesus sits there and listens, doesn't deny it. The truth is we kind of gave it up when we decided to eat the fruit. It's like, I own all of this. The devil knows why Jesus is here. The devil knows that Jesus has come to die. And if you go back or go forward to the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus is begging God for another answer. Saying, God, I don't want to do this. If there is another way, please take this from me. The devil knows how hard this is going to be. So I was like, you know what? I want you, all you have to do is get down on your hands and knees right in front of me and worship me. And all of this is yours. You no longer have to die. The devil was giving Jesus a way out. He was saying, Jesus, you don't have to suffer. If you will just worship me, we already established that you have the power to make things happen. If you just bow down and worship me, you can end hunger. You can end disease. You can have the whole world know that you are Jesus and that you saved them, and just worship me. How hard would that have been? To choose to be beaten to death, to choose to have holes be dug into your brain, to have your beard ripped out, to have people spitting on you. And even worse than that, to have God, the person who he was closest to in all of the universe, turn away from him and not want to look at him. But if he'd have done that, it would have never fulfilled the purpose, because the whole purpose of Jesus coming wasn't to end disease or to end hunger per se. It was because God was the soul of the day. God wanted to hang out with us. And if Jesus decided to bow down before the devil, he would have denied God of the relationship that God desired. What did Jesus do with all his authority? Everything that he deserved? He gave it up. He gave up his desire, even his need for food. He gave everything up for us. So then, here's my next question. What should we do? You can turn with me to Matthew chapter 5, starting with verse 38. what should we do? That's what Jesus did. And Jesus deserved everything. What should we, who deserve nothing but death, what should we do? Matthew chapter 5, starting in verse 38. If you're there, say hi. Hi. Hello. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye. So who here, when something happens to you, when somebody puts a kick me sign on your back, and after your rear end is black and blue, and you realize that there's a kick me sign on your back, wants to turn around and put a kick me sign on that person's back? Nobody? Thank you for your honesty, you 2 people. Oh, 3 people, okay. We all have this tendency that if we're hurt, whether it's in a playing way or in a menacing way, to get back at the person who hurt us. Right? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. What you do to me, I'm going to do it back to you. And truth is, if you take one of my teeth out, I'm taking all your teeth out. Don't mess with me. And certainly don't mess with my family. I'll come after you. But I tell you to resist an evil person. You put that in context and go back into the original Greek and all that good stuff. It's not saying resist that person as in push back against that person. It's saying resist the urge to get back at that person. I'd even go say as far as to say resist the evil person that you are. Jesus was talking to some people, and he's like, you know what? Who among you, if your father asked for some bread, would give them stones? Or if he asked for a fish, would give him a snake? If you being evil, Jesus mentions that we all got some evil inside of us. If you being evil know how to give gifts, how much better can my Father give good gifts? But I tell you to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on the right cheek, punch them on the left. No? Says turn the other cheek to them. So if they slap you on this right cheek right here, they go like, whoop. What you do, you go, okay. Right there. It's ready for you. Come on. Go for it. Right. And I read a study, my friend Anna had shared the study with her, that the part of the point of that in that culture was if something happened where this person who's above you, but typically it was a master-slave relationship, a master-servant relationship, and they hit you, you put yourself in a position, okay, well, you have the right to do that, so I'm gonna allow you to do this one. And if they were to do that, it would make them look foolish. Put them in a situation where they have to lift you up. The Bible talks about when you repay evil for kindness, it's like heaping hot coals onto your enemies. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, so somebody comes up to you and you know you haven't done anything wrong. Say you patted somebody on the back and just said, hey, you should probably get out of here. And they turn around and they call the cops and they're like, hey, cop, she slapped me. Got to arrest her. I want you to take everything she has. I'm going to sue her for everything she has. And you know you didn't do anything wrong. But if you choose to fight it, what's going to happen? Then they're going to fight back, and it's just going to be this big war. But if instead you're like, you know what? I'm really, really sorry. I shouldn't have laid my hands on you. Here, let me throw some extra money your way and go ahead and go to the doctor and see if I bruised you or anything. Go above and beyond. It says if they want to take your shirt away from you, then you know what? You take your shirt off, and then you also grab your cloak that's right here on the chair behind you and say, here, this will help keep you warmer. Go above and beyond. Whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. That goes back to that law that I told you about, that if a Roman soldier came up to any Jew and said, you need to carry my stuff, Didn't matter what you were doing. You could be in the middle of trying to save a sheep that has fallen into a trap and a wolf is about to eat it. And the soldier comes up to you and he's like, hey, it's the last sheep you got. Carry my stuff. You had to do it. So what Jesus is saying, you know what? The law says you got to go 1 mile. And after that mile, you can just hand him the stuff and say, peace, I'm out. Right? Jesus said, don't do that. Don't do that. As soon as you hit that mile marker and the soldier turns to you and says, all right, thank you, you say, let's keep going. You've never done anything nice to me, but let me show you what I can do for you. Give to him who asked you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, and do not turn away. That was really hard. So I've let people borrow stuff of mine before, and they give it back, and it's very obviously broken, and they totally play it off like, oh, I can do that. That's how you gave it to me. What you talking about? Right? Never want to let them borrow it again. And Jesus right here is saying, you know, if somebody comes up to you, don't turn them away. You give them what they need. Basically, he's going back to that thing where it says you forgive somebody 7 times 70. You forget about what they did. Let me tell you what my Father does. Every time you sin and you come to him and you legitimately get down on your hands and knees and you legitimately ask for forgiveness and you turn away from that, my Father doesn't hold on to it to remind you like, you did this. My Father throws it so far that from the east is from the west, literally unending, it can never be reached again. That's what I want you to do. Somebody broke your toy, lend it to them again. Stop holding stuff against each other. You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Makes sense. You love people who are nice to you. Somebody's nice to you, particularly somebody's nice to your children, you absolutely love that person. Like, oh my gosh, you're the best person in the world. You made my kid smile, and my kid has been screaming all day. Thank you so much. Right? So you've heard it said that love your neighbor, hate your enemy. Somebody comes up to you and they spit in your face. Are you going to like them? This is not fun. I used to work for Pizza Hut as a manager, and I had an employee who liked to come and go as he pleased. So one day he showed up 5 hours after his shift started, and he clocks in, and I asked him, like, hey, where have you been? And his brother's like, you beeping, leave him beeping alone. I'm like, all right, whatever. So he clocks in, and then 20 minutes later, makes himself a pizza and clocks back out. Rings the pizza up, and then asks me to take the money. I'm like, no, I'll take the pizza, and I'll take your uniform. His brother spit in my face. If it wasn't for the fact that there was a cop right there to see it, I was about to jump over the counter. I'm not gonna lie, it's not the easiest thing. When somebody treats you wrongly, you want to come back at them. Jesus says, I want you to love them. How do you love somebody who's doing that to you? Somebody's mean to you, somebody kicks you while you're down, or makes fun of your kid, like, you want to come after them. How do you do that? How did Jesus say, Father, forgive them after they did everything to him? Do we deserve respect? How often do we get this attitude that respect is earned? If you want me to respect you, you have to earn my respect. But I'm sorry, there isn't a single person in this world who deserves anybody's respect. But Jesus said, respect them anyways. Whether you think they deserve it or not, respect them, love them, go the extra mile for them. Because that's what I did. I went beyond for you. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. And pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. We've all been used. Whether it's been by our own siblings, by people who we thought were friends, by coworkers. We've all been used. And Jesus says, when people use you, you bring them to me. Become an intercessor and say, Father God, they need your love. That you may be sons of the Father in heaven. And he makes his sun rise on evil and on the good, and sends rain to the just and the unjust. So this is how God acts. Doesn't matter how bad you are. Doesn't matter how good you are. We all get the same amount of sun. We all get the same amount of rain. We all get the same provisions that God provides for all of us. Why do we think we can treat people differently? For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? And I don't think that this is talking about like the immediate reward of, okay, I'm going to love my wife, and my wife's going to love me, and there's an amazing relationship that happens there. In light of eternity, what does it mean to love somebody who is unloved? My pastor in Arizona taught me to ask myself this question in every circumstance. In light of eternity, what does this mean? In light of eternity, when my daughter is doing exactly what I said not to do, and I instantly become angry and yell at her out of anger, in light of eternity, what am I doing to that little girl's soul? It's something I struggle with. It's something my wife and I talk about. That there's a better way. I need to watch the tone of my voice. Does that mean I can't be firm with my daughter when she's being disobedient? Spare the rod, spoil the child. There has to be a balance. In Corinthians 13, 1 through 3. I'm just going to read it. Though I speak with tongues of men and angels, though I can speak to all of you, though I can speak to every Mexican and every Chinese person, I can speak all these amazing languages, which no, I cannot, but even if I could do that, and I could speak in a language of angels that God could understand, and angels could be like, oh my gosh, how did you learn that? Only I know that language. Although I could do something like that, but if I do not have love, I'm just making noise. I could preach the most amazing sermon. Pastor Dan could be up here and he could preach a sermon that would completely wow every single one of us. But if it's not for love, all we are doing is making noise. And though I have gifts of prophecy and understanding of mysteries and knowledge, I could predict the future. Or I could walk up to you and I could tell you God's got this word for you. And tell you exactly what God has to say for you. I can wow you with the mysteries of the universe. Or answer the most complicated math problem in the world. If I could do that, but if I don't have love, it's nothing. I could have the faith to literally remove mountains. But if I don't have love, what's the point? I could want the best for my daughter, but if I don't respond in love, I'm not giving her the best. I could want the best for my bosses. I've had a boss that mistreated me. And I'm sorry to say I didn't handle it the right way. I would tell my wife all about her and how she treated me and how I would respond. And writing this sermon, like God really dealt with me. Like, Anthony, how are you treating my people? I used to work in a bakery in Arizona. And there was a few customers who I really didn't like. And at 5 o'clock every night, I was supposed to have this bread ready. Have it out of the oven, bagged, and ready for people to take. And every once in a while, things would go wrong, like it wouldn't rise the way it was supposed to, and it had to take a little bit longer. And people weren't very understanding. And there's this one particular person who was always there ready for their bread. And if it was not ready by 5, she let me know that she was disappointed. And one day, like, she was ripping into me, and I let her know, like, hey, this happened, I'm sorry, it'll be ready in about 10 minutes. And she's like, that is unacceptable, or like, just digging into me. And I turn around and I go to work, and under my breath, I'm like, God, I hate her. And as clear as day, I hear God say, but I love her. Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me. So I want to finish this lesson with a question. We recently had Valentine's Day. How well do you love your Jesus? If we love Jesus by the way we treat other people, how well do you love your Jesus? Father God, you were good. And I thank you so much for your word, Lord. And I pray that it will penetrate all of our hearts, Lord. And that every single day in all situations, that we will ask ourselves, in light of eternity, what does this mean? How much do I love you? How much am I loving you when I respond to the way people treat me? How much am I loving you in the way that I love other people? Father God, keep this in the forefront of our minds and on our hearts. In the name of Jesus, amen. Amen.
again.
What did she say? Purchase on her own water. Oh, so I'm playing with the cord? Well, I'm not used to having the cord. I'm used to having the wireless one. Or I don't use them like. But I had to make sure that like that was good. YouTube. First December. I think it's Rupert first, and then today's date. It's recorded every single Sunday. It's left on the show. Go back and watch.
See, Mama? Hurry! Hurry fast! Hurry fast! Hurry! Hurry!
I will see people drive that. That's always like, it's horrible, but it's always nice to see somebody who's well, maybe a little bit better speaking. I don't usually stand up for you. So before I moved to Arizona, I was so many traffic violations.
Jeremiah, you gonna put this up for me?
I went to jail one time. No way! Oh my gosh.
But now I'm the one that's
One for the fridge, one for the bathroom window.
I think I can write it on the calendar and give you the best. You know, if I put it on the calendar right now, that's the best.
I already requested it off, so I don't got to worry about trying to remember.
Where are you working Sundays?
Brewster's.
Oh, that's right. That's the one in Rupert.